Welcome to the Korea Society and welcome to Studio Korea. I'm Nikita Desai, Director of Policy and Corporate Programs at the Korea Society, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all to this corporate program. Bloomberg rankings earlier this year in February ranked US and Korea as the top leading innovative countries among a list of 50. And they did this by determining several factors. R&D investment as percentage of GDP was one of them. Patent applications was another. High-tech companies and the density of high-tech companies in these countries. So at the Korea Society with the corporate programs, we actually highlighted Korea as a leader in patent applications and patent development. So today's program is a wonderful addition to that existing corporate series looking at Korea's growth and elevation in the international stage. And today's program looking at innovation and Korea and looking at Songdo particularly as a study in U.S.-Korea innovation. So I'd like to welcome today Tom Murcott, who's the Executive Vice President and also the Chief Marketing Officer at Gale International, and Cliff Thomas, who is the Managing Director at Cisco. Please give them a warm round of applause. I'd like to introduce each of them briefly. Cliff Thomas has been at Cisco for 16 years in various capacities in sales, global leadership, and development. He has over 25 years of experience in the telecommunications industry, including management consulting. And Tom Murcott, aside from his role as already the Executive Vice President and the Chief Marketing Officer, is also the Global Foreign Investment Officer for Gale, providing strategic oversight for Gale's corporate and project communications program. Prior to joining Gale, Tom was a founding partner of a New York City-based integrated marketing services firm and has more than 25 years of international marketing experience. So thank you both for joining today.
Thank you.
We'll start off by talking about Songdo. It's been profiled as a smart city, a green city, a city of the future. So I'd just like you to introduce Songdo to all of us today.
Sure. Well, our firm, Gale International, was invited to participate in the development of Songdo by the Korean government. And we are developing a private sector central business district that is in the Incheon Free Economic Zone. And our task is to create a place that will help Korea internationalize its economy, a place that become a destination for multinational corporations to grow their operations and their businesses in Northeast Asia and globally. And to do that, we set out to build a smart, sustainable city. It's called Songdo International Business District. And in order to do that, we had to invite the best possible partners into our team. And from a technology perspective, it was Cisco, who we have partnered with to deploy the new set of technologies as well as manage the sustainable aspects of the city.
I think what I could add to that too is what we look for is several ingredients. And as a company, we don't try to do everything ourselves. We try to figure out, are there key stakeholders that we can create trust and transparency with to be mutually aligned to our respective goals and aspirations? And so when we heard about the Songdo project, I think it was Stan Gale, your chairman, came to our CEO, John Chambers, I think in 2005, and talked about the opportunity and the vision he had around building this sustainable city, a destination, and an environment that will just be an experiential opportunity for citizens that will live there. And we were pretty excited. This was in 2005, and we frankly were very honest. And we said, we didn't think we were ready. And Stan came back to John Chambers and Wim Elfrink, our head of our globalization center, in 2008, 3 years later. And we learned a lot in talking to the Korean government and working with Gale and saying, we have a portfolio of some phenomenal offerings, but more importantly, we have a strong ecosystem. And in order for us to be successful, we needed some work to do. And so we did that over 3 years and got engaged in 2008. And fundamentally, what we are excited about and are excited about is visionary leadership from not just Gale, but also the Korean government, the appetite and desire to form public-private partnerships. And I think the other aspect is this concept of a strong ecosystem that are mutually aligned. And the other thing that was exciting is the willingness and desire for the Korean government to be flexible and think about smart regulation to facilitate not just innovation, but outcomes for its citizens. And so we saw those ingredients with a visionary leader like Stan Gale and the Korean government to say, we're all in.
great. Could you talk a little bit more about this ecosystem and your desire to make everyday living more efficient, a transformative experience? If I were to move to Songdo today, how would my life change?
Right. Do you want me to cover
All right.
that? Okay. So I think, so there's one piece today and there's a vision for tomorrow. And I think what Gale and the team in partnership with POSCO have done a phenomenal job of executing today is the place right now, the physical space, and concepts around, and this isn't mine, this is really their efforts, which is if we can create an environment where I can go to the grocery store, I can go to a school, I can go to work, and I can walk within 12 or 13 minutes, I'll do so. If it takes longer to do that, I'm going to get a car and drive. So how do I create a sustainable environment just for fundamental human behaviors that I had nothing to do with and our company had nothing to do with? But then a desire around sustainability. So there's no garbage trucks that run around Songdo collecting. It's all pneumatic waste. So what a phenomenal approach where they had an opportunity at a greenfield to think about different ways to do fundamental, simple things. And so your everyday life in walking around Songdo today, and you see some visions here, it's real. It's a real community today where people are living, working, playing, and learning in a community rather than commuting back and forth. So the fabric of the community is all of those key fundamental elements. So today, that's the picture. Tomorrow, which is we're building this fabric of technology and almost the platform from like a Samsung or an LG phone is a platform, but the application services that sit on top. And so we can spend some time talking about those, but that's the vision around how do we use technology around learning, about corresponding and facilitating collaboration from a business perspective, from healthcare, from safety and security. And these are services that are now very easily deployed because of the vision that Gale and the Korean government have to infuse technology at the point of construction rather than an afterthought. So we're almost like the fourth utility, if you will.
As a foundation rather
Correct.
than as a...
So that's where we're at right now, is executing on the foundation. And then there's some aspects from, you've seen some pictures of the Songdo Chadwick International School around distance learning and education. So there's some services that are being born out right now and more to come over the next few years.
And you mentioned the ecosystem. I think that that's crucial. And what we're setting out to do is to create this technology platform that we've already put in place with Cisco and other partners. And now you're going to start layering these technologies and these applications on top of that. So what's interesting is we're involving obviously local domestic Korean companies in that undertaking. So for example, there's a company in Korea called Innovative, which makes a very sophisticated video delivery system, if you will, manages video very efficiently. And we use that extensively in our safety and security systems throughout Songdo. So that started about 3 years ago, I think, was when we introduced them to Cisco. Now that company is partnering with Cisco not only to deploy these solutions in Songdo, but they're also taking these technologies and they're exporting them to other places around the world. So Cisco is helping to create new jobs for Koreans, and that's the goal here: is how do we revitalize or not revitalize, but keep that Korean economy very, very vibrant, and how do we create new jobs for Koreans?
And this company, it's a startup company that is it based in Korea, or
it's
is
based
it
in Korea. It's a small,
Valley
I think it would currently qualify as a small and medium-sized enterprise, although it's rapidly growing.
Right.
And their business is now being exported. In fact, the president and CEO of that company has just recently moved into Songdo, so he's now a proud Songdonian.
Yeah, and I would also offer, just on the ecosystem piece, is that what excited us is not just the vision that the Songdo project has and is executing against, but also when we talk about ecosystems, our DNA is we will never do everything. We can't. We're really good at some really foundational technology facilitation, and we're trying to connect the unconnected, if you will. And you mentioned Innovative, but then also LG and Samsung. We formed, through Gale's leadership in the build-out of Songdo, a joint venture with Gale, POSCO, and LG CNS. And then likewise, we worked closely with Korea Telecom on looking at really a joint venture around citizen services in the public domain areas. And so our DNA is innovation is going to come from all different forms: large companies, small companies, and we're really excited about Songdo University and university students, because the innovation isn't going to come from folks like myself, it's going to come from others. But how do you create a fertile bed by which to facilitate and embrace that as an opportunity? And the last piece is we opened up our Global Center of Excellence in Songdo. And the reason we did that was we want to invite entrepreneurs, developers from all walks of life
Mm-hmm.
to participate in the opportunities that, frankly, 2 years from now, we'll be talking about these as use cases, and we'll be talking about in 4 years. So it's sustainable in that regard.
Great. Could you talk a little bit more about the integrated technologies and healthcare, for instance? If I'm in my home and I don't want to commute and I
Right.
don't want to get in my car and drive,
Right.
how can I access my doctor? What are some benefits of this innovation and technology with the smart and connected communities?
Yeah, and I think what Stan Gale is the best salesperson on the planet for our company, because what he does is he uses these day in and day out in his own apartment in Songdo. And so it's a lot of it is around preventive care, right? So he's not only able to get his vital signs from apparatus that can get his blood pressure and pulse and all that good stuff, but then he's able to have a live interaction with a physician via an immersive video capability we call telepresence, right? And so it's less about the video and the audio, but it's about the experiential relationship that you want to have with your physician. And so what we're trying to do is not displace that face-to-face interaction, but augment it. So how do we, in most cases, provide a preventive health and wellness opportunity that you have either with your physician or a health and wellness professional in an intimate way? And so what Gale has done is work with us very closely around providing this immersive capabilities through video capabilities, telepresence, in every apartment in Songdo.
Mm-hmm.
So that is one use case from a healthcare perspective, but now there's a whole host of others, from yoga classes to English or Korean classes, et cetera, and to retail opportunities to have video analytics and video capability in the retail industry around cosmetics. The permutations are limitless, and we're gonna just create this platform. But that's an example of maybe the healthcare. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Well, I think the point is that the citizens are going to help us define what these services are, and the goal here is to provide an avenue to these new technologies, and then let the consumer decide what are the things that are going to be truly transformative from their perspective, and is going to be life enabling, and then let them choose. So we put the platform in, then we let them acquire the technology as they see fit. So it's not foisted upon them; it's actually something that they can acquire at their
They can personalize as we now personalize everything in our lives.
Absolutely, and that is a key fundamental philosophy that we all need to take. The days of building a system in 4 years and then launching it are over. I think it's rapid services based on the needs of its citizens, and so a big part of that is harnessing social media around what the community wants and desires, and then offering up, as Tom alluded to, is this platform by which to, and this innovation center, which is promoting folks to build on top of it and deploy where appropriately, right?
Great. Now, I'm sure it's really difficult to maintain a constant innovation, high as you're working in terms of building a city for the future and anticipating what new technology could be compatible or integrated. So how do you build a future city with present technology? And do you try to develop things to retrofit? Or is that something that, what's your outlook on that?
The way that it's going to be sustainable is open standards. So anything you do needs to adhere to an open standard. That is us, other companies, competitors of ours, complements of ours, from a technology perspective, can be invited to participate because it'll be market driven. And it'll be driven by its citizens and consumers around what tomorrow will face. If you create and build closed systems from a technology perspective, then you're going to create walls. And I think what's phenomenally encouraging to us is that Stan Gale and the Gale International team, as well as POSCO, looked at it and they said, there's two facets to this. From a build perspective, we could build things the way that it's been doing for hundreds of years. In some cases, those are proprietary closed systems, right? And just energy, for example, right? So what is it? More than 70% of the world's energy is consumed by cities that are 40% consumed by buildings that are only 40% efficient. That's because disparate systems don't talk to each other. So Gale's latched on to kind of this vision around how do you converge systems, and that reduced first costs and operational costs. But really, the opportunity is the things we were just talking about before, the services, the experiential services that create new revenue streams and new jobs that sit on top of that.
Wonderful. So tell us a little bit about where Songdo is at now in terms of its development phase, what you anticipate, for the future, and tell us about the GCF, which is the Green Climate Fund. which has recently been appointed to Songdo as the host city.
Sure. In terms of the development, we're about 100 million square foot total build, and we're more than 50 million square foot built out, up and occupied. There's 27 some odd thousand people who live in our footprint. Tens of thousands more live right around us in the surrounding areas. There's about 30,000 people who work in our footprint every day. So we are a thriving city of today. I think that in terms of where we are in our trajectory for the long term is we're just getting started. We're still in the infancy. But what you're seeing now, which is really interesting, and I was there just a couple of weeks ago, is the culture and the sort of thriving, the vibrancy of going out at night and seeing people at a coffee shop or at a cafe and seeing people pushing babies through the park. And it really has the energy of Songdo on the weekend. We get tens of thousands of people coming down to our new NC Cube retail outlet, which is 300 brand new shops that we just opened up it's about a couple of months ago now. And you go down there at night, you can't find a parking space. So, we're starting to get that energy. And I think that we're now seeing that others are validating what we've set out to do, what Korea has set out to do. You look at the GCF coming in with putting their secretariat. They selected Korea first, happened to be in Songdo, which we're very proud of, and we think that part of their decision-making process was coming. They voted on it in Songdo, so they came down and saw what the Koreans have created here. The World Bank is coming and moving into putting their Korean headquarters into Songdo. We have a Hoysung, which is a contact management company, call center company, which is putting 3,000 new employees in there. We've got about 15,000 new employees in terms of Lotte, Eland, NC Cube that I just mentioned. In the next foreseeable 18 months, we'll have another 15,000 people moving in and working in Songdo. These are new jobs. These are jobs that didn't exist before. So we're pretty excited.
Yeah, I think what's exciting, this is a living lab. And so not just for Songdo and for Korea, but then how do you export this capability to the globe? Right, so these new jobs that were being created for Koreans and Korean companies are now have the opportunity to take these learnings and export those to other countries, right? So it's pretty exciting.
That's wonderful. Well, we're going to open up for Q&A now. I'll just repeat the question for our recording purposes. So if you could keep your comments and questions brief, please state who you are. That would be really helpful. Yes, Mr. Park. And so the question is, Tom, what would be the attractive, what are your selling points for moving a company from Seoul to Songdo, or for law firms or for other financial services that are already based in Seoul? What is sort of the way that you get them to Songdo to take advantage of all of these things that we talked about?
Well, this is our challenge and our opportunity, right? I mean, we're plugged right up into one of the best cities in the entire world, and it's a very thriving city, and 25 million people live in close proximity there. But we have some points of differentiation for certain corporate occupiers, so for example, if I'll use Jimmy Kim as an example, the small company Innovators, so very small, but he's doing more international business now, so he finds himself traveling all the time. Here, when we were building Songdo, we made sure there was an airport, a bridge that connected us to the airport. So now we're 20 minutes away from that airport. Anyone who's traveled in Asia knows that's a fairly large amenity to be that close to an international airport. We're finding that, and it's been interesting. I'll use the call center example, as well as a company called ADT Caps recently moved their R&D facilities down to our development, and they were frankly concerned whether they would lose some of their best people because they were coming into Songdo, and the fact of the matter is they didn't, and particularly for those who are living in Songdo and working in Songdo, there's a real quality of life opportunity there because you're not doing that commute every day. So there are some points of difference.
I'd also, can I just add something to that?
Mm-hmm.
So 30 minutes from Seoul to Songdo, I don't drive in Korea. I've taken taxis. It's an hour plus every time I've gone. I got to follow the way you go because that's really fast. It's but the other, Seoul is a phenomenally great city, as Tom alluded to. But if you look at these photos, I mean, this is real. So if you want a differentiated way of living, it's not to compete with Seoul. It's a different way of living, working, playing. So the concept of your office employee being able to walk down to the international school and watch your child play a soccer match at lunchtime is impossible in Seoul, in my perspective. So it's all decision. And then, as you said, it's 13 minutes from when you get out of customs into Songdo from the airport. So if you're traveling a lot and you're an international business person, what a great location. So it's trade-offs. It's not one or the other, I think.
So, I mean, also you talk about the growth of smart cities and the growth of green cities because of cities like Seoul that are very big, large populated metropolis and where
Right.
real estate is expensive, difficult to come by.
Yeah, so I view this as more of a pioneering opportunity. So if you want Seoul, you need to go to Seoul. But if you want something different that we think is different and unique, then Songdo is an alternative, right?
Question here. The question is, what is special about the K-12 public schools that attracts people to Songdo?
Well, this school you see here in the PowerPoint is actually a private school operated by Gale International, which is out of Palos Verdes, California. We brought them in to operate the school that we built, and they are the operator, and they're doing a phenomenal job. We've now opened K through 10. Every year we open another grade because we just have to grow into so we'll graduate our first class in 2015. I'm pretty excited about that. But what you'll also find, there's many other public schools in our footprint or immediately surrounding our development footprint. About 13 of them in total will ultimately be in place. And these are now consistently ranked as some of the best public schools in Incheon, as well as within the greater Seoul area. So in fact, there's the academic attraction is significant, and we find people actually moving into Songdo to be able to put their kids into some of these public schools as well as the private school.
I'd also add if you look at the amenities, they rival some of the largest universities. And the other is, at least the international school does, right? And so as well some of the public schools, because they're new, right? And the second is there's an international flair. I mean, there's an international interlock between Koreans and everyone else on the planet in these communities. And so for me, for my child, who lives here in the United States, I want them to experience diversity and diversity of cultures, languages, and, just beliefs, right? So I think that's only going to help our children in the future.
When I was there, I also learned about the satellite campuses. Could you talk a little bit more about which kind of universities have satellite campuses in Songdo?
Sure. The city of Incheon and the Ministry of Education has built a facility called the Songdo Global University Campus. It's designed to initially house 10 international universities. Currently, there are 4 that have signed up. So you've got the University of Utah, you've got Ghent University, George Mason University, and SUNY, the State University of New York system. And they're putting complementary international curriculum. Their U.S.-based curriculum, or Belgium in Ghent's case, is putting their curriculum on the ground in Korea. And we're going to start to be able to provide the university education to Koreans who previously had been exporting and are going out to the United States to get their education. Are going to be able to get that education in Korea, as well as Chinese coming in, Japanese, and others from the area.
That's great. Yes. Okay, so it's a two-part question. The first question is, has the Korean government provided any financial incentive for the residents of Songdo? And the second question is, what is the most important attribute of Songdo that you think would be the most exportable worldwide that you would think is an example?
Not just for the residents of Songdo, but the foreigners who come and like the schools and other foreign companies come, and is there any tax?
Right, tax incentives
Right.
For any companies, residents, domestic or international.
You want to handle it?
There are, as part of the Incheon Free Economic Zone attraction strategy, there are in fact a number of regulatory incentives as well as financial incentives for international firms in certain industry sectors to bring their business into the Songdo footprint or surrounding. Again, think of us as the central business district, but you've got a section dedicated to R&D, biopharma, other areas that are within the greater IFES footprint. That is all very codified within the local government what those incentives are. As far as residents go, they're incented to move there because of the opportunity that presents itself to them as a consumer of residential real estate. But there's no incentives per se to the actual residential owner to move there. That's
The only thing I'd offer is, in addition to that, is the Korea, U.S. Free Trade Agreement, right? And so that is also a byproduct of some great opportunities that I think we haven't even exploited, just passed, right? So it's.
And the second question about what do you see as the most important attribute or as an exemplar attribute that you would like to see implemented elsewhere from Songdo?
So from my vantage point and from Cisco's perspective is You look at this, you're playing golf and then you can go 10 minutes to your office. So, you have a promenade and a shopping. I'm just looking at these pictures and every time it's exactly what it looks like. And it really is a beautiful community. So I think it's taking the best of what is made each city unique and different, from Venice to New York to Paris to Belgium to, Tokyo, et cetera, right? And brought it into a footprint that you could actually, it's not to replicate that, but it's creating its own DNA, but taking the best of many different cities and coalescing them.
Accessibility.
Yeah, I think so. And that's the idea, is that, you get the best of both worlds, is I think, not just from a technology perspective, but more from an experiential perspective. The technology is more of an enabler.
Yes, in the back. I'll try to rephrase that question, but what are the opportunities to see Songdo develop organically from internally to exterior borders as well?
I think the challenge of bringing anything of this scale online is that you have to have a very tightly defined plan in terms of how you're going to phase things and when things are going to come on board and what your infrastructure build out is going to be, et cetera, and so on. So it's a bit prescriptive because it has to be in order to be successful at the outset. But by the same token, once you build this physical space, once the bricks and sticks, as Stan Gale, our chairman, likes to call it, is in place, then the organic, how shall we say, alchemy has to happen, where you're having different types of activities happen in these spaces that we've built. So, for example, there's a few photos up here of this canal walk, 800-meter long, low-rise retail on the first two levels, and then studio apartments up on the top two levels. And that was something that we wanted to bring in a whole host of different types of retail opportunities and activities into that space, but also be able to have artists and other folks be able to afford those apartments that are in the upper spaces. So we have a real vibrant sort of cultural energy happening down there. And as I mentioned earlier, I was down there the other night at about 11 o'clock trying to get a cup of coffee, and I couldn't even find a parking space because the local university students were down there, and even some parents were. I don't know what the kids weren't in school, but the kids were down there, and it's really starting to create an organic energy in terms of organic growth around us. We are a land reclamation project, so again, as it grows out, ours is fully reclaimed, so we're fit in our footprint. But as the additional land starts to get reclaimed, additional uses will be prescribed for that. And I think they will build largely off of what we have created and be supportive of that, as well as hopefully a logical outgrowth of what's already been done in Songdo.
What is the difference between a smart city and a regular city, or a smart building versus a regular building? What does a smart anything do?
Yeah, so they only do two things. They consume less resources, whether that's energy or whatever it's because they're just more efficient, and they provide experiential differentiation, meaning, when I now walk into a building or in a commercial office, when I badge in or use some kind of identifier, it'll take on the persona of who I am as a person based on the criteria that I've pre-selected. Or if I go into my home, or if I buy something in a store, and there's two moments of truth when you buy something, is when you buy something in a store, but when you bring it home is the second one. And so how do I maintain that experience of when the cosmetologist put makeup on me or something like that, or did my hair a certain way, and then it doesn't look the same when I come home? How do I maintain that experience? And with immersive video and those capabilities, we're extending that experience back to the home. Or my interest in learning Korean as an American, I have now an opportunity to do that after dinner. Not going to class or going to somewhere, it's coming to me. I'm bringing those services to me wherever I am in that community. So I think it's about efficiencies and consuming less things and just being very, very efficient, either in first costs or operational costs, and it's experiences. And that's it. That's all they're doing, both in the buildings and the community. And if you're not focused on that, you're focused probably on the wrong things.
I have a follow-up to that. You started this project in 2005 when Cisco came on board. At what point did your technology make this possible? I mean, at what point or what shift would you say was really sort of important to make bringing home all of these services or getting those to you?
So there's a beginning, but I don't think there's ever an end. So to answer your question, I think there's some foundational capabilities, which is this pretty simple, right? Getting different systems to talk to each other, or some services around transportation, or the other examples I gave you.
Mhm.
So it doesn't end there. And I think when we started off the conversation around this platform is I hope to sit here 2 years from now and there'll be 1,500 other examples that have been created by Koreans or other companies, et cetera, or entrepreneurs.
Mm.
So I don't know if that answers your
Yeah,
question, but
no, that's fine. Yes, in the back. So the question is, how does North Korea fit into the picture?
North Korea
Kind
is,
of a broad
is,
question,
is an omnipresent reality of doing business in the Republic of Korea. I think that, you know, we have been doing our business there quite successfully for the past 12 years. We feel very safe and secure. I can tell you an anecdote when President Park Geun-hye came to Washington, D.C. and met with the industry leaders. Our chairman was one of them. And she went around the table asking each of those industry leaders, what is it that makes you feel good about Korea or worries you about Korea? And I think what she was trying to get to is North Korea an issue for you as part of that question? And what our chairman told her was, when I'm in my apartment and I look out, I'm approximately 32 kilometers from the from that demarcation line. And I will pick up the phone. I feel very safe and very secure in my apartment when I go to sleep and rest well every night, knowing that I am safe and secure in Songdo. And every night I will pick up the phone, Madam President, and call you and tell you that all is safe on the Western Front. So we believe as an organization that Korea is in fact a very safe and secure place, even with the somewhat of a wild card that North Korea is perceived to be, and in fact is.
I think the only thing I can add, we live in New York. I live in New York. And 9/11, one of the worst, tragic things that happened here in our city, right? So every city is as safe or as unsafe as you perceive it to be. And we're in a global economy right now. We're in a global world. And so I think at the end of the day, we need to live our lives looking forward and be prudent. But at the end of the day, there's certain things we can't control. What we can do is try to make Songdo and Korea, South Korea, the most successful country on the planet, as an example of ingenuity and collaboration around the globe. And that'll only, I think, give opportunities and promise for other countries, whether that's North Korea or others, in my opinion. Maybe that's naive to think, but I think we have to look that way towards the opportunity.
So question in the back there.
So I think the question was, does Cisco make the technology around this distance learning, around education?
Anything for the smart city? Are you guys also doing the software?
Yeah, so what Cisco is doing is, I'm going to use, maybe a Samsung or an LG or an iPhone. Sorry, I'm mentioning an Apple product. But anyway, so the idea is there's a platform, right? And then there's an app store or a service that I'm going to use a techie term here, is software developer kit, an SDK, or an application programming interface. This is open standards by which to give developers the ability to write unique software applications that manipulate that platform, that network, because now we're connecting all these things. And how do we extract value? So we're not necessarily in the application game, we're in the application enablement game. And so the only difference is when we created this telepresence experience, it's still a platform of immersive video, but there's many companies are writing applications and video analytics that sit on top of that. So, and we're not going to change on that. We are going to continue to try to, the best way we can be successful is make everyone else successful, right? So that's our philosophy and that's our execution plan.
I'll take one more question because we're short on time. So go ahead. So the question is, for young students that are graduating, that are looking for job opportunities, if you were to find a job and work in Songdo, what is the sort of affordability of these beautiful buildings and these apartments? And also, what is sort of the target, what is your target audience for who you're trying to attract in terms of their income levels?
Sure. Well, again, this is the International Business District, and we were charged to build that downtown, that central business district hub. And our charge has been, in fact, to create a quality of residential that is competitive with Tokyo or Hong Kong or other places around the globe that these multinational corporations, could locate. And so, therefore, by its nature, we set out to design residential that was on the more upscale end of the equation. That said, there is development all around our development as well that meets a whole host of different economic strata in terms of its affordability. So depending on what kind of a job you were to get when you came to be in Songdo, and I would highly recommend you come, that there is an opportunity for lower cost housing in Songdo. I mentioned some of that canal walk housing, which is more what we call office tel in Korea. That's a smaller space, certainly more affordable than a 3-bedroom penthouse in one of those towers that you saw, which is a much more rather expensive undertaking. So I think we do have a variety of different types in Songdo, but just understand why Songdo is there in the first place, because it is, however, by its very nature, creating opportunity, creating jobs, not just for people who work and live in Songdo, but for the greater community. So, that's important to understand as well.
Would you like to add?
I just think about food. I know about living, but like I can get Korean barbecue, walking distance, and it's very affordable, and the food is phenomenal. And we can go to very fancy restaurants in Songdo as well. So I almost kind of equate it back to if I have a dichotomy of kind of ability to eat in restaurants in more reasonably priced and more expensive, and likewise, I've seen the office tel. I'd love to live there. It was actually kind of nice. Well, you want to sell me something?
Well,
Just
no,
like, it's like, but,
just going to say when Cliff's taking us out, he'd go to the expensive places.
no,
Well, with that, I'd like to thank you so much, both to Cliff and Tom, for attending and
Great.
providing us this very valuable insight. Please give them a big round of applause. I'd like to just briefly, if you're not members, please join us as members. You can sign up with our lovely interns out front, and we'd welcome you back next week. We have a corporate legacies program with Nick Bratt from Lazard Asset Management, and it would be great to have you here. Thank you again for coming. We really appreciate it.